I'd like to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm speaking to you from today, and acknowledge traditional custodians across the state. I'd like to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. Hi everyone, I'm Steph Thompson, the WayAhead Workplaces Program Lead. I'm so excited to be presenting the WayAhead Workplaces Wellbeing Award today, recognising organisations that support employees in their health and wellbeing in the workplace. And I'm thrilled to be here today with Nicole Vernon, Safety, Health and Wellbeing Manager from Legal Aid New South Wales. Welcome, Nicole, and congratulations on your award. Thanks so much for speaking to me today. And why don't we just get straight into it? Can you tell us a little bit about your organisation, what it does, and the range of different work that your employees might do?
Sure, and thanks for having me here today. So Legal Aid provides legal services to the disadvantaged and vulnerable people of New South Wales in most areas of criminal law, civil law and family law. We also assist those with domestic violence situations. We have approximately 1,400 staff and we are the largest legal firm in New South Wales.
I actually didn't know that. I did not realise you were the largest legal firm in New South Wales. That's really interesting. So you've won the award, the Mental Health Matters Award, for the creation of the Mentally Healthy Workplaces framework that you've implemented at Legal Aid. Can you tell me a bit about what prompted the creation of this framework?
Yeah, sure. Great question. I've been with Legal Aid for about 2.5 years. And when I first started, a lot of the talk and mandate was around vicarious trauma and the types of material and trauma that our staff are exposed to. When I started to unpack that as a project, it became apparent to me that there were two key areas of focus. One, staff use the term vicarious trauma to explain a lot of different things that they're feeling and that are happening to them. So it might be compassion fatigue, it might be burnout, moral distress, but they use the one term vicarious trauma as all-encompassing. And two, if I was going to focus on vicarious trauma, by definition, it's quite a narrow area of focus, and it's got quite a narrow, therefore, area of support. So it became apparent to me that we needed to focus our project work much wider than just vicarious trauma. And I was fortunate enough to come from Safe Work New South Wales, working on the Mentally Healthy Workplace project. And so I had the insights that perhaps focusing on a mentally healthy workplace and looking more holistically was going to benefit Legal Aid and all of the risk and hazards areas that we identified.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, for sure. And vicarious trauma, from my sort of readings and from the members' feedback, is a fairly new term that people are still getting their heads around, particularly in the workplace. So it makes sense that it's just sort of been thrown around a little bit, but actually trying to define things and come up with a more holistic strategy makes a lot of sense.
Indeed.
Yeah. So how was the framework introduced into the organisation? How was it implemented?
So what we did is we developed a very generic framework that focused on primary, secondary and tertiary interventions, but we had a really holistic guide that sat beneath that framework that really talked about all of the different strategies, tools and resources that we had to support those three areas of focus in the framework. So we did a soft launch initially and we rolled it out on the intranet, just creating an intranet page for it, creating some links. We then started with our divisional risk workshops across the organisation and talking to them about psychosocial risk and what did that mean for them, what did they think the psychosocial risks were. And it was at that workshop that we released the guide and the framework and called it a bit of a cheat sheet for the controls that we had in place. We then used it as the opportunity to identify the gaps that may exist within our framework or guide and our projects that we were going to work on for the next couple of years. From that, we then later released our mentally healthy workplace policy. And that was the broader release across the organisation in which we promoted not only the policy, but the framework and the guide.
And how has this work been received by the employees at Legal Aid?
Staff are really grateful that we have embarked on this journey. They understand that we still do have a long way to go. So I think the easy work's been done, but embedding it and sustaining that on an ongoing basis day to day will be the hard part. But they're really grateful that we're actually addressing the issues that they've seen exist for quite some time and providing them with some tools and resources to be able to support their mental health.
Mm. Do you have, for the implementation of the framework, do you have leadership and executive support to bring it to life and to implement it? Is it supported throughout the whole organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that was the key to this piece of work. The CEO is really open and acknowledging of the mental health issues that our staff may face or may come across just from their day-to-day work, and really wants to ensure that we've got that holistic focus. And when I talked earlier about going from a tight focus of vicarious trauma to a wider focus of mentally healthy workplace, Brendan, who is the CEO of Legal Aid New South Wales, was really welcoming and open to that idea. It was actually when I came to him with the problem, so to speak, and said, actually, vicarious trauma is not as wide as what you're defining it as. He was the one that first suggested, can we look at a broader base to work from then? Can we look at a more encompassing system that'll keep our staff well and safe?
Yeah, makes sense. I saw in your nomination, in your submission, there was a particular focus at this stage anyway on flexibility and flexible work. Can you tell me a bit about that and why that was your priority?
That was actually the first project that kicked off. So like I said, I've been here 2.5 years and we launched our flexible work policy last February. Wow. We'd actually been working on it during the previous lockdown. And the CEO was clear that he wanted an innovative approach to flexible work that wasn't traditional public sector. He wanted us to think outside the box. And so we came up with a principle-based approach for flexible work and identified some key principles that staff had to operate within. And what we asked from them was then to go away and to do some team design workshops. So as a team, work on what flexible work looks like for you as a team, what your must-haves are, what your not allowables are, based on the work you do and the client base. And then once you've established your team design agreement, we had them developed as posters for teams. And then they were able to go away and develop their individual flexible work agreement in line with the principles and the team design agreements. So that was a key area for us because our work is actually so rigid at times and it's quite difficult for people to have flexibility, that we wanted to show them that if, for example, they were going to court in the morning and then it worked better for them to go home and work from home for the afternoon, that flexibility was something that we wanted to embrace at Legal Aid. And so we released our policy, like I said, last February.
I think that's really interesting, that having that approach, a sort of team-based approach and a principle-led approach as well, because flexibility is going, as exactly as you said, it's going to be possible for different types of roles, for different workplaces, for different individuals. What that looks like is going to be very different. So, you know, leaving it up to the teams to work through that is, not only does it mean that they can create what that looks like and be consistent across the team, but also put some trust back on the individuals and on the teams to decide what flexibility looks like for them. So I really like that.
Yeah, indeed. And trust was actually one of our principles. So
there you go. Yeah. I could talk about trust and leadership and workplace mental health for a long time. I want to ask a little bit more about other projects within the strategy. What are you up to at the moment? You know, you've done the flexible work project. What else have you done since the beginning of last year, and where are you up to now?
So last year we developed a connector support guide. It wasn't anything flash or outstanding, but what it was is a tool that brings together all of the resources that staff have available to them, both internal to Legal Aid and external to Legal Aid, into the one guide. This year, we've actually, just at the start of this financial year, we enhanced that and we included some wellness activities as well. So we've got a lot of mindfulness activities, relaxation, breathing, etc. We've incorporated those into the guide, so expanded it this year already. So it's a one-stop shop for people if they're unsure of what resources we have available to them as supports. We're currently working on a peer-to-peer framework, and that's bringing together, again, all of our different peer options across the organisation. So it might not necessarily be something that my team are working on, but it for example, includes our Aboriginal Managers Support Network. where Aboriginal managers support each other from a peer-to-peer perspective. It brings together our disability support networks and the various options there. So it's a holistic framework that shows all the different options available. And we've only literally just submitted that up to the CEO today for endorsement. But what sits underneath that is a couple of new initiatives as well. And we have our vicarious trauma champions and our unreasonable client conduct champions. So unreasonable client conduct is a term that we use within Legal Aid based on the behaviours of some of our clients. And we've got policy and guidelines that our client service division have written just to provide a bit of guidance and some scripts around what to do in certain circumstances should clients act inappropriately. And it happens often. If you think about the nature of the work we're doing, it's not a nice environment often to be working in. So we really want to have those supports available for managers. And so our new approach is to have some champions, so experts in their field. So usually they're senior solicitors in charge, and we're giving them some masterclass training in unreasonable client behaviour. And so they'll be the go-to for people if they're unsure about a particular situation, they need support or assistance during an uncomfortable situation, whether it's over the phone, face-to-face, email, or an interaction with a client. And we've got the same, like I said, for vicarious trauma. And so we're creating two different arms of champions across the organisation, and they'll be the experts in that field that will give them refresher training annually, and they'll support the business through those two topics, being vicarious trauma and unreasonable client conduct.
And so the champions within on those two subjects, that champion network sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, organically supports themselves, or do you run those champion networks, or is it something that exists on their own and they run it?
Yeah, so we will give them the masterclass training. So they've got the experience and the refresher. We'll then give them the supports that they require. So it'll be just up to staff. They'll reach out to each other as they require. But we'll do quarterly interventions to support to bring the champions together and to give them some support with a psychologist and to talk about their any concerns, any troubleshooting that they may have had during their roles. And so that they're an additional support to our mental health first aid officers and our peer support officers.
I'm interested in, we've already touched on this a little bit around how this has been received by the employees at Legal Aid, but have you got any sort of, have you done the evaluation, or do you have any anecdotal feedback or data on how these various projects have been received and how they're going, or how much people are interacting with them?
Yeah, we've done we do a couple of individual surveys based on those organisational wide projects. So we've got a lot of surveys based on the flexible work project, for example, and how that's going. And from the wellbeing or the mentally healthy workplace perspective, we utilised the Safe Work New South Wales mental health tool, the benchmarking tool, that gives you a guide on how mentally healthy your workplace is. And it has categories 1 through to 5, where 5 is embedded and sustained, and 1 is basic awareness. And look, when we first did this project, and this started in, the first survey was conducted in March, they felt we were between a level 2 and a level 3. We had equal scores for level 2 and level 3. So we weren't performing very high. So what we do is we keep the communication open with those groups of people that we brought together for the divisional risk workshops in the first place. And so every time we introduce a new tool or a new resource, or we're thinking of a new approach, we reach out to that group and we ask them for their feedback. We send them the tools. We ask them to disseminate them to staff. So we're just trying to find alternate ways to communicate down to staff, because what we found is from the divisional risk workshops, they weren't necessarily reading the all organisational communications that you would traditionally send your messaging out on. So we're looking for ways to embed that into the day-to-day activities staff are doing, and try to feed that information down through alternate ways. So I think there still would be a portion of staff that if you talk to, they wouldn't be very familiar with the program of works. Like I said, it's fairly new, but we're looking always for different ways to embed that. And we always do our tailored programs as well for our high-risk areas.
I think, yeah, look, that's not uncommon, is it, in larger organisations, you know, having great programs or projects, and the message might not always reach people on the front line, or, you know, or staff, and it's an ongoing sort of journey for people in roles like ours. So we've only got a couple of questions left. What's next for Wellbeing at Legal Aid? Do you have anything else exciting going on? I mean, you've talked about obviously the champion networks, but do you have other ideas for the future for Legal Aid and Wellbeing?
Definitely. We're going to tackle a little bit of a complicated one this financial year, in addition to the ones I've talked about with the champions and the peer-to-peer framework. But we're looking at workload management. So we're working with the organisation really intensely on workload management. And what we're looking at is a bit of a risk support matrix. So looking at allocating a bit of a point system to staff based on the types of files or matters that they're looking after. And then certainly putting a support package together for them based on the level of risk that they may be at. So, you know, if it may be a murder, you know, we might allocate 5 points to a file, particularly if it's going on for a long period of time, for example, we might have extra 2 points. And then at the end of that period of time, you look at the point scale and determine what level of risk they're in, and allocate appropriate support strategies, whether it be a well check with a psychologist, or EAP sessions, mandatory EAP sessions. Depending on the level of risk, we'll attach an appropriate support strategy.
Okay. Interesting, and certainly a very unique workforce that you have, and vicarious trauma is obviously a very significant issue, and yeah, it sounds like you've done some amazing work in your short time there. So well, good on you. Thank you. Well done. And finally, what does winning this award mean for you, mean for Legal Aid?
Look, these sorts of things make me very uncomfortable. I'm not a public person, but I did it for my team because they have worked so hard, and they are very good at what they do. We're only a small team. I have one safety person, I have one injury management health person, and then I have a project officer that works with me. So we're only a small team, and on top of day-to-day, they've managed to do all this as well. So I did it for them, and the acknowledgement that the business, and the thanks and the appreciation that's come back from the business as we've promoted our award winning has been really great. You know, thank you for the work you and your team are doing, Nicole. We really appreciate how far things have come in the last couple of years. So really great comments that show the business that we are here for them, and that we are here to improve their health and safety as much as we possibly can in supporting New South Wales and our vulnerable clients.
I'm so glad to hear that. I know you're not a very public person, so I really appreciate you being here today and talking to me. I think I'm hoping that lots of people, you know, watch this and learn from, you know, you as a great case study. You've got some really complex needs internally, and it's, you know, it's hard stuff, and it's an ongoing journey, isn't it? So thank you for your great work, and thank you for joining me today, and congratulations once again on your getting your award. And I also just want to mention that Legal Aid are one of our newer WayAhead workplace members, which is really exciting. So I can't wait to share even more details of the great work that Legal Aid is doing with our members.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the award, and thank you for acknowledging the work that we're doing.
Thank you. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow, Friday, 29th of October at 12:30, when Asha Zappa will be speaking with the New South Wales Mental Health Commissioner, Catherine Lowry, and the 3 award winners of the Commissioner's Community Champion Award, Tony Hunter, Robert Butch-Young, and Gabrielle Gomez. Thank you.